Maybe turn the light on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're recording now. This is June 12th, 2002. This is Thelma Mueller and Andy Mueller, and we're going to interview them about their life history. Okay, I don't know. I guess, Grandma, why don't you go ahead and start and tell us when you were born, where you were born, and
your English name.
And your born name.
I was born August the 8th, 1910 in Jake County, Indiana. And what else do you want?
What is your, what is your English name?
My English name, I don't know what my English name is.
What was your name when you were born? Thelma?
Thelma Neoma Star.
What's your Mongolian name?
No, don't have one of them.
I know, Mom.
Steve, go wire, go wire. Okay, tell us about the house you were born in, and did you have a car? Did you?
I was born in the same house that my dad was born in. And I had two brothers.
I'll work with all this background. Go ahead.
And of course, back then, you know, we didn't have anything modern. So when Saturday, you want me to start with them? Saturday come, we got our daily bath, all in the same tub.
Outside.
Outside in the summertime. And
what did you use for soap? You couldn't go to the store and buy soap.
Well, the way they used to make soap, they took lye and lard and made soap out of it. I've seen my mother do it, but I don't know whether there was anything else put in it or not, but that's all I can remember about that.
What did you use for towels then? You had to make your own towels?
Well, I
sacks.
Them sacks, like they used to wrap, feed come in it, yeah.
Like flour sacks.
So that's probably what they used. I don't remember about that part of it, but...
and they washed you in what? What'd you use for a bathtub?
It was a big, round... you get me excited here.
Ooh, still after all these years.
It's a big, round tub that they used, and they also used that for other things, too. I don't know what else, but then it was a big, round tub. Maybe 2 foot deep it would be.
What'd you do in the winter, then?
Well, it would have been done in the house by the big... What we had was a coal stove, and that would be in the living room. The old house had a front room, a front porch, but you never used that. That was the bedrooms back of that front porch. The living room was to the side of the house, and the kitchen.
That's where you put the tub in there when you took a bath
in the winter time when it was cold, yeah.
And this lye soap that you use, you were talking the other day about how it made your skin soft. And
oh yeah, it's real. Your skin is just as soft as silk with that lye. I think there's some people yet today, Amish people probably still make it. I don't, you know. And then, of course, on Saturdays, we always went to town on Saturday night, and we were not allowed to get out by ourselves. We had to stay with our parents, but that was a Saturday night deal. And my dad, once in a while, would take us to the drugstore where they had the little table and chairs and buy us ice cream, and that was a treat then. On the farm, my first, no, maybe I'll tell this to, my mother seen us do it, but me and my two brothers thought we was going to play a trick on my mother, so there was a long trough with a lid on it. And we got in it and closed it up, but our mother seen us do it, so she crept up real quiet, and I can remember this as it was yesterday, set on the lid. And then when we tried to get out, we couldn't get out. Oh. My mother, I remember her saying to us that, you know, just letting us, she could hear us inside. How was we going to get out? Yeah.
Oh. What were your toys when you were growing up with? What did you play with?
You know, the only toys I can remember, we had a neighbor, and she had a box of toys. I don't remember, only sleds that we had. But this neighbor lady had a box full of toys, no children, and I have no idea where she got them. But we would go over there, and she was like a second mother to us. We called them aunt and uncle.
Yeah. And
it was George and Evie Whitaker was her name. And but later in years, they did have children, but not till I was pretty well growing.
Did you play games?
Yeah, we played all, well, really what we did mostly in the summertime, we had a creek that ran through the farm, and all the neighbor kids always come to our house to play. And we had a swimming pool in the summertime. It was, not a swimming pool, in the creek, a swimming hole where we all went swimming, the same place where we went ice skating in the wintertime. And then our sleds, we had a high hill that went down to that creek. And we used to ride our sleds down the hill. And then I can just barely remember when we got the first car. I suppose I could have been maybe 5 years old, but I'm not sure about my age. But I can, because Jay was a baby, and I was 15 months older than Bud. But I can remember when they delivered that car. But I can't remember too much about after we delivered it, because I figured when I started to school at 6 years old and had 2.5 miles to walk to that school, but there was other children in the neighborhood too. But maybe later on my dad may have taken us sometimes, but it's funny that I can just barely remember that car when it was delivered to us.
So when you went into town with the car, when you first got your car, were you one of the first ones in the town to have a car?
We were the only ones. There was no other cars.
So everybody gathered around to see your new car?
Yeah, I guess they would have, because we were the only ones with a car. We got the first bicycle when we still lived in the old house, because the, what was that thing the horses was tied to? The
hitching post.
Hitching post. Well, my dad took a 5-gallon can of cream to town to buy a bicycle. We had a long lane to go down to get to the main road, and when he turned, the cream can fell over and spilled part of the cream. Well, I don't know what he did, but he went on to town and we still got our bicycle. And all the kids in the neighborhood learned to ride that bicycle.
One bicycle for all of you.
One bicycle for all of us. The same way when they built the new home, they had told us ahead of time that our Christmas present would be a sled or we'd get one thing, and that's what it was. It was a sled.
For all of you?
For all of us.
So Christmas time, that was it. Did you get stockings?
Well, we had stockings, but they would be filled with what you had, apples or popcorn. The tree would be decorated with popcorn. You know, a lot of people, yeah, string of popcorn on the tree. You didn't have any kind of fancy.
No lights.
Things. No lights, of course. No nothing.
How did you get your tree? We used fake
ones,
so.
In the front yard of the old house where I was born, there was 6 big cedar trees. So my father, and I can remember him telling us, I was old enough to remember the first one that was cut off. Every Christmas, for 6 Christmases, our tree was from the top of those 6 big pine trees.
So they just kept topping them?
And then after that, I don't know, I suppose we just had a regular pine tree after that.
Was it a big ordeal decorating your tree? Did everybody do it? Or?
Everybody did it. Everybody did it. You know, you can't imagine what it would be like in a house like that. Your living room was in the middle, and the bedroom's to the one side. And the living room was where you spent most of your time. And in the evenings, we, had no electric lights. We had, just a lamp that was run by coal or gas or coal, kerosene. And that was the only light you had at all.
So there's no TV, there's no radio. Was there a radio yet?
No,
What'd you do in the evening?
Well,
go to bed?
I suppose we would play games, and I can't remember what kind of games we would play. I don't remember that either.
What about like the old record players? Did you have one of those that you wound up?
No, we didn't have one of those either.
Did you dance back then? Did you have dances?
No, not when I was a little girl. You wouldn't have nothing like that. The main thing was, you went to church every Sunday. And the horse and buggy. I didn't tell you about the horse and buggies. Before we got the car, and we used that horse and buggy after we had the car, because I can remember different times when that was used. But with the horse and buggy, when you had the fair, you've all been, where the fairground is.
Fair.
Okay, we had a carriage, a 2-seated carriage. And my mother would fill the basket full of food, and We went to the fair and spent the whole day. My dad was a stockholder in the fairgrounds, so we never cost us anything to go to the fair, but we would go. Tuesday was Children's Day and Thursday was Adults' Day, but everybody went, but that was the main day. So when I was born on a Thursday, and my dad told me it was the only Thursday of the fair that he ever missed, was when I was born.
What was your dad's name?
Forrest Clyde Starr. Forrest Clyde
Did he
Starr.
have brothers and sisters?
He had Uncle Herbert and Aunt Iris and Aunt Edith. 2 sisters, there was 2 girls and 2 boys. Then he had 4 step sisters and brothers.
Did they grow up on a farm also?
Yes, they would have grown up on, let's see, well, sure, when my father's dad lived in that old house
Oh,
with
your
his first
house.
wife too, and had 4 children from, it was 4 or 5 children from the first wife, and she died from childbirth. She was pregnant and jumped off of the wagon, and then she died. Then Grandpa Starr then married my dad's mother, which was 20 years younger than what he was, and had my dad and Uncle Herbert and 2 sisters, Aunt Iris and Aunt Edith.
What was your grandpa's name then?
John Starr. You know, I can't remember.
John?
I should have. but
What
he's
did he do for a living?
Oh, he's a farmer.
Farmer too?
The Starr family owned most of all the land around there at one time, at that whole square. But like things happened, one boy caused a lot of trouble. So my dad, where I was born on the farm, was 180 acres. Then later on, my dad bought another farm, 160 acres, and then a 25-acre plot with a house on it. And that was the acreage that then. But we was us kids was all brought up on the home farm.
That your grandparents
That-
were at?
The one that my dad's,
Was born in.
my grandfather
John.
and grandmother, John.
And her name was Grandma?
Grandma Starr's name was, oh my goodness.
Haven't thought about that one for a
Haven't
while.
thought about that, and I got that all down at home too. Let's see, and Grandma Starr. Ethel. No, Mom's name is it. My goodness.
It was just Grandma.
It was Grandma Starr. And
Do you remember her as a child? Was
oh
she around
yes,
much? What,
your mother has those little china dishes. There's 2 or 3 of them that my Grandma Starr gave to me at Christmas time, and it was still in the old house then. And I can this I can remember that Christmas so well, because she brought it out in a big box, and we just thought we was getting a lot of things. And we did get a lot of things, but I got that in particular, and I had the little, about this big, you've seen it on your mother's dresser, and then the other one has a little stand, and that would be for your jewelry. And I have always kept that, and
she
then I
gave
give it to
you
your
that.
mother.
How old were you? A teenager then?
Oh,
or a girl, or-
no, I wasn't a teenager till after we moved in the new house. See, I was 10 years old when we moved in the new house. No, I probably was, I wouldn't know, maybe
If you lived in
4 or
the
5
old
years
farmhouse, where did your grandparents live then?
in town.
So they moved
They
to
moved
town.
into Portland, Indiana. They bought a house there and moved into Portland. And that was when my dad took over the farm. The reason my father took over the farm, his father, Grandpa Starr, didn't know how to manage things. In them days, it was a lot different. And he got in debt, and so my dad, the only way that they could keep the farm was if my dad took it over. And that's how my
And
dad...
how did he turn things around? What did he do?
Oh, my
Remember?
father, he knew how to farm. He knew how... when I was little, he used to buy carloads of young cattle, little calves. Feed them, because you raise corn and oats and wheat on your farm. And you alternated every year. You wouldn't plant the same thing in the fields. You kept alternating them. But they don't do that now like they should.
Because why did they alternate?
Because the ground is more fertile, and it's the...
Taking nutrients out of the ground and stuff. Different.
And if you alternate them, then it helps to keep in the ground. But of course, then you had cattle and pigs, and that's how you fertilized your ground. You didn't use had no chemicals at all.
So you guys
nowadays.
ate pretty good, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
had
Oh yes. Oh,
beef
yeah.
and
beef
pork and
every
not
year.
you.
Yeah.
We'll get to you.
every year we had a butchered, and they would how they do, the cattle would be tied up so that you shot them. That's how they kill the cattle. And then when they were and all the neighbors in the farm, on the farms around, most of them, right close, all come in and helped everybody. You know, you didn't do it for yourself. The neighbors all helped, and then the men would do the butchering and get them ready, and then the women would the sausage. It had to be ground up, and then it was. They took the. Now I suppose they still do that. The intestine. Scrape them, wash them, and clean them good, and that's what the sausage. You had a thing that would fill that with the sausage, and the hams and your bacon would be wrapped in these white sacks that they would get from feed. That's where they'd get them, and the hams especially. I remember my dad had a long needle that you injected St. Peter. It's like a salt into the ham. And then you used, and I don't know the mixture, there was a mixture of salt and other stuff that he rubbed all over that ham, and all of them, and then wrapped them tight, and then they would be hung up and drip. Then when you would open them up to eat, months later, they would all be molded on the outside, but you always trimmed off with those. You'll never know what good ham tasted like.
So you cut all that mold off, and then you...
Well, not until you sliced it. You'd slice it off, but you'd have to cut the mold off. But you know, we didn't have refrigerators then, so after it got hot enough, the meat had to be cured, but then it had to be canned.
Oh.
You know, you had to can it because you couldn't.
Keep it
You didn't
longer.
have a refrigerator to keep it in then.
So would they butcher the cows like in the fall? So you had all winter to keep them fresh, and then can them in the summer?
By spring then, what was left, you'd can, but you had meat all year long. Those hams would stay forever
Did you have
without...
a cooling box?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, the cooling,
wells they used
the
to
well.
They
We
used
had
to
a
use that for
well,
cooling.
and it was a pit. They called it a well pit. That's what they called it. And that's where you kept your milk and your cream.
Because it was cooler
It was
underground
cooler
there.
underground. That would probably be, what am I, 5 foot? It was 6 or 7 foot deep, but you had a way to get down into it, of
Yeah, at
course.
that time they had ice boxes too.
Well, we didn't have an ice box. I don't even remember when we ever got an ice box. I don't.
Too
I
far
know-
from the city probably to haul the ice out to you, huh?
Well,
Probably in the city they probably had
I
ice
had
boxes.
to get it out. Yeah, they had ice boxes, but I can't remember, because you see, when I was 10 years old and we moved in the new house, then we had electricity, because it was not from anybody big.
Batteries.
Uh,
You call them.
Like a generator? Or?
Generator, and they had those big blocks that had water in them, had to be redone over I think it was once a month.
batteries.
They're like, yeah, batteries.
So did
and-
the lights, did they dim if you had a lot of lights on since they were coming
Well,
from
you
a
know, you could
generator?
use-
Or?
It's like everything else, you only couldn't use so much.
So
light.
much.
Yeah, just so much of it.
Unless you-
And we had a bathroom, too. But then, of course, then you had to have your own septic tank, and you all know about that, what that's like. But we did have a modern home.
So you had a bathroom that had running water into it. Did you have hot water?
Oh, yeah, we had
Oh.
hot water, but, well, now, you got me.
You didn't have.
I don't think so. I think the hot
Probably had
water
to heat
still
the
had
hot
to be
water.
heated on the stove.
What'd you do in the winter when the ground was all frozen? What did you take water out and keep it in the house?
Oh, no,
or-
you had a well, and it
And it
gets
didn't
pretty-
freeze way
No.
down there.
It might freeze, but then they always had to thaw it out. I can remember a few times when our well froze, but you know, but it would depend on what kind of a winter you might have had. But
And of course, now when your lane that you had to drive down and got full of snow,
well, you had
just by hand you had to shovel it, or use the tractors?
No,
or?
we probably had no. You didn't have no tractors then. Had horses, and the plows and all the farming equipment was drawn by the horses for a long
So
time
you-
until you could get other kind of
If we got Tuesday, then
You just stayed
You
home.
just stayed home. That's right, you did. You didn't go then like you did now. You
Yeah.
went to town on Saturday night and that was about it. In the wintertime, maybe you didn't even do that.
Yeah.
What was Christmas tradition? What would you do something special Christmas Eve? Will you do candlelight service at
No,
church? What do
at
you?
Christmas, it was Christmas Day. We either went in, most time it was on the farm. Grandma and Grandpa Starr would come out, but I can't remember whether, each family had their own Christmas together, because I know Grandpa and Grandma Starr and my mother and dad and brothers, that would be our Christmas together. Now maybe later in that, why we would get, when later on in years, this was while I was, before the new house was born, my mother's father and mother had a big house, and it was about 10 miles from where we lived. And every Sunday, all of the brothers and sisters would meet at Grandpa Bird's house. Now that was on my mother's side of the house. And he,
So Grandma Starr, who was Bird, they were farmers also.
Yeah.
Okay.
and anyhow, when we'd go to their house on Sunday, and you went in and then we went in the horse and buggy. That car evidently wasn't driven a whole lot until later on, because I can remember when it was delivered. But I remember more about the horse and buggy than I do the car, except I remember when that car was brought to us.
Now you said the buggy was a two-seater, so where did
Yeah.
everybody sit?
Well, it would just be my dad and mother and me and my two brothers. We'd go to Grandpa Starr's, and it would take 10 miles, in a horse and buggy. It would take quite a while to get there.
But there was enough room for all of you to sit in the
Oh,
buggy.
yeah, it was two
Okay.
seats.
Oh, front seat and a back seat.
Front seat and
Okay.
a back seat. A buggy.
Okay.
Well, buggy was one seat. A carriage was two seats.
Okay.
And it had side curtains on it to keep you warm in the winter when you went
Just
in
like
it.
the Amish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's similar, yeah. And but when Grandpa Bird bought a merry-go-round, and this was something. It was round with seats, and you pumped it, and that's what us kids would always play on when we'd go to Grandpa Bird's.
On Sunday.
And everybody went to his house on Sunday.
You had a big dinner.
Big dinner, and on Saturday was the day to cook, do your baking. I can remember my mother. You'd bake pie and cake and
bread.
homemade bread, yeah, everything like that.
Was there certain areas in your home where you had your evening get-togethers or relaxing before going to bed or anything?
Well, in the living room, everybody went to bed at the same time. You'd wait. Well, maybe when we were younger, we weren't put in bed, but as we got a little older, I can remember that my mother would put us kids all to bed first, and then her and Dad would go to bed. But us kids slept in the same bedroom for a long time because you didn't have but 2 bedrooms. And then Mom and Dad had the other bedroom, which was just right next door to
So
us.
it got pretty cold in the bedrooms in the winter, huh?
Well, yeah,
Had
you
to-
slept with
Lots of
wool
blankets.
comfort. Yeah, wool. They would be wool.
And then somebody would get up, and go start up the heater or whatever.
Well,
and
my dad always done that in the morning. You put enough in it to last all night, but
Okay.
then the next morning the whole house would be cold. Andy remembers that even when he was older. But it was. You have no idea what it was like.
That's what we're asking.
That's what you're asking. I guess it is.
to do it every day like this, it's, yeah. It's
So was it
really,
like you could curl up with a good book because
No.
all you had was candlelight?
No, nothing like that. My dad was a reader. My dad read all the time. He always had this Saturday Evening Post but I don't know what other magazines there was then. But you didn't have television. You didn't have even radio. You had none of that. None of
No
that.
telephone?
No.
Did you-
Yes, you had a telephone, and when you rang it, it would ring everybody. Everybody would hear it ring. So everybody listened to everybody else, and that's how the news got around.
even when you were a little girl, there were telephones.
Oh, yeah, they hung on a wall. You've never seen one of them. They hung on a wall, and it had on the side, you'd ring, you had a certain ring. Say our neighbor's
Yeah,
ring, maybe.
operator.
Yeah, maybe our neighbor's ring was one long one and one short one. Well, when it rang, that's the way it was.
That's the way you knew if it was your phone ringing by what your ring.
But
how many rings
everybody,
you had.
but when the phone rang, everybody listened.
Because you didn't have a headphone, it all just came out of this box?
No. You had a thing on the side that you
Have
picked
you ever
up.
seen one of those relics?
Oh, the
Yeah,
round thing, and
yeah.
you talked into this
Yeah.
thing.
Talk into that. Yeah.
So everybody in your area listened to the conversation that you were
Everybody.
having.
Well, that's how everybody knew what everybody was doing, I guess.
That's where they got news from the operator too. She used to call.
Tell everybody
Yeah.
what was going
Yeah,
on.
you had
Did
to
you know
call-
Thelma was pregnant?
Yeah, there was an operator, and that would be one long ring to get the operator.
What about laundry? How did you do
Oh,
laundry?
I had a tub.
The same tub you took a bath in.
No, I had a copper tub, but that's what you filled with hot water and your lye soap, and you put your clothes in there and you boiled them. You boiled them.
Up on
And then
your
you had a
stove.
stick that you kept stirring them all around.
Did you have one of those washboards?
Yeah, I had a washboard, but I don't remember the first washing machine we ever got. I don't remember when we did get a washing machine. But for when I was little, that's the only way I can remember that we done.
So
Do you
you,
ever remember tornadoes when you were little, or any big storms?
No, we didn't. You see, then you didn't have them like you did today because the trees helped to protect storms. Well, you know, our trees are all cut down and all this building and everything going on. But then you would have storms.
You know,
What?
you know, even this territory here at one time was just nothing but woods.
yeah.
The whole thing.
So that
Like,
helped prevent the
it
bad.
Bumpers
the
that
bad,
winds
the,
and
wet,
stuff.
the tornadoes. When we'd have a bad storm, and I don't remember of ever having too bad a storm in the old house, but I remember when we got in the new house, we had a basement. And there was 2 or 3 times that I remember we went to the basement. There was a real bad storm that did happen north of
they
where
had
my
their
parents
storms.
lived.
Any flooding around you at all?
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot to tell you about my pet lamb.
Oh.
That reminded her.
Yeah, that reminded me. We had a sheep, and sometimes they wouldn't claim they'd have 2 babies, they'd only claim one of them. So I got the one that the mother wouldn't claim, and so us kids raised it and hitched it up to a wagon, and it did everything. You know, well, there's entertainment.
Yeah, that was your toy.
entertainment. That was a toy. So, you know, it comes time when they get older that they need to be taken to market. Well, my dad said he'll get it loaded up while I'm still in bed. But little Miss Thelma woke up and got up, and my lamb was on that truck. So I put up a howl, and I was my father's pet, I guess, my dad. I loved him. He was wonderful.
You were his own little daughter, only little daughter, yeah.
So, took the lamb off the truck, and I got to keep him.
Oh.
But that summer we had a flood after that. And my lamb was down to the creek, and he drowned him. So,
But
And
you went
then
and
you
got the
found-
wool off of him, didn't
well,
you say?
my
And-
mother, yeah, she said, well, we'll go get the wool off of him, and maybe we can get it, we'll wash it and clean it up. But that got to be a problem, and if I remember about that, we give it up. After we got all that wool, we give it up, because that's a job, you know.
Let's talk about your dad. Did he have a pet name for you, or what did you two?
Sis.
Sis.
You were
I went by
Sis.
Sis.
Huh.
My brothers called me Sis till I was in high school. Well, I guess Bud still called me Sis yet while he was still living.
Oh,
Yeah.
Then did you help your dad farm ever, or?
My mother and I were not allowed to help any on the farm. My dad would never let us work on the farm.
men's work, huh?
Our job was the house and whatever. Oh, and my job, I was. You had a stump, and you had 2 nails. You put the chicken's head in the nail, and I'd chop it off. And I learned how to dress chickens, and I did that. That was, you know. And another thing I used to do, and maybe I shouldn't be telling this, but this was when I was older, after I was in the new house. If I wanted a pair of, well, that's just when I was in school. If I wanted a pair of shoes, and I can remember doing this. I went to the strawberry patch and picked a whole bunch of strawberries. We took them to town and sold them so I could get a pair of shoes that I wanted. But
That's
I
when
was a
you could
little
buy a
older.
pair of
now we want to tell our children that who want $7,500 shoes. Go pick some strawberries
Yeah,
and we'll
and
sell them.
sell them and buy your
So
shoes.
when you wanted to buy something, be it flour or whatever, you had to bring a product to market to trade?
Well, no. Well, we did at one time take flour in. That's when that was when what was it, when you had to take, you couldn't get flour, only taking it in and having it ground, and then that was your flour. But we always had, we went to town, you see, you raised most everything you ate on the farm, but there would be something, we'd go to the grocery store, we had a grocery store in Portland that we always traded at, and once in a while they'd have bananas, and that was a treat then. And if you, 3 of them, they'd buy 3 of them, one for each one of us kids, I can remember that too real well. You made that banana last a whole day.
What about coffee? Did they drink coffee or tea?
Yeah, they drank coffee, but I think
Coffee's
you had
way
to
back.
buy the coffee at the store.
Coffee's from way back.
Yeah. What about clothes? Did your mother sew
Oh,
your
well,
clothes, or?
My mother wasn't much of a sewer. She had a sewing machine, and I remember one time that she told me to leave that sewing machine alone, but I didn't, and then I still got the mark right there in my finger where the needle went through my finger. But Mom never was much of a sewer. I remember when we started to school, we did go to town, and maybe you'd get 3 new dresses, and then you always had to wear long underwear because it was cold, and we had to walk to school. And you know.
And you didn't have boots.
Oh yeah, we
You
had
did have
boots and heavy stockings. You could get wool stockings that you wore over your underwear.
And then did you knit mittens?
Oh
and
yeah, you
hats
had
and-
mittens. They bought them. I don't, maybe years ago I know they used to knit them, I suppose, but Mom never done anything. But they had stores where you could buy clothes at.
What's the prettiest dress you ever had as a little girl? Did you
Oh
have a
boy.
favorite?
You know, when your prettiest dress, and I can't remember what it would be like, our church, where we all went to church, after in the summertime, they would have all the children, we would get together, and we had a teacher, and you'd learn to speak a piece, or you'd do something. For 2 weeks, you was taught, and then on a Sunday, everybody come to church, and all the children performed. And I remember one of my pieces that I said one year was, this probably was at Christmas time when we did this, was peach and apple, plum and pear, nice as they can be. Give me the fruit that grows on the good old Christmas tree. That was one of my, and I always remembered it.
And you'd wear a nice fancy
Oh
dress?
yes, you wore a nice fancy dress.
Were they floor length? Were they?
No, they would probably, I have a picture of me with a great big bow in the back of my hair.
Did you have to wear a hat and
No,
gloves in church?
No, you didn't wear. I think the women probably wore it, but the kids never. In the wintertime, of course, you'd be all dressed up in warm clothes.
Did your mother wear dresses to the floor?
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
oh yes. They wore
Long
long dresses most of the time. When I was little, later on in life, they didn't.
Did you wear pants at all?
You mean?
Trousers?
Trousers, breeches, overalls?
No.
Well, I don't think so. I have a picture of us 3 kids, and the boys, we looked like ragamuffins. I had a dress on, but they had on pants. But
They didn't do that for a long time.
no,
Yeah.
we didn't.
The
We
women-
wore dresses to school. You never. But you know, you had to wear warm clothes, but your dresses you wore to school.
Now, your mother's name was Ethel.
Ethel, Sarah Ethel.
Sarah.
Ethel.
I never knew
Sarah
that.
Ethel.
What kind of a mother was she? What do you remember?
My mother always said she was, when we were little, after I got older, I always said she's like a mother hen over her little chickens. But my mother, I don't ever remember my mother, later anyhow, of putting her arms around us and loving us like we do today. Mom, your mother remembers that too. That, you know,
Not real affectionate.
she wasn't affectionate. No.
But your dad, was he
My
affectionate?
dad was very affectionate. Yeah, my dad was.
He liked to cuddle and...
Yeah,
Was your
Yeah.
mother a good cook?
she was a wonderful cook.
Had to be,
Yeah.
didn't you? I
Yeah.
suppose. on a
Yeah.
farm. You couldn't
Yeah.
run down to McDonald's. You had to be a good
You
cook.
never ate out any place. The only time was, like I was telling you, when
Family.
we had ice cream that you'd eat
Oh,
out.
mhm.
No, you never ate out any place. I suppose there was restaurants in Portland, but then.
But they had potlucks every now and then.
Oh
where the
yeah,
community
well,
got
dinners,
together.
big get-togethers. Families
Churches
used to
would.
get together. What?
Mostly churches.
Yeah, mostly churches.
So you talked about walking 2 miles to school. That was elementary.
That was the first grade. My first grade of school was 2.5 miles, and that was what they called the center school. And then the next year, my mother held me back because she wanted Bud and I to graduate from school together. So for 2 years we went to that center school. Then the next year was when we went to the Blaine school. It still stands there. It was only about, let's see, it would have been about 2.5 miles, maybe a little over 2.5 miles. And we used to, in the wintertime, we used to walk through the fields to get there over the snow because, you know, it was a shorter way to get there, but otherwise you had to walk down the road 1/2 mile to this other road, which was the length of the mile would have been.
Was it like a one-room schoolhouse type of thing?
One-room schoolhouse, one teacher taught the 1st grade up to the 8th grade, but you didn't have a lot of children, maybe 20 or 25 or maybe 30, you know.
So you went to school there through the 8th grade?
Through the 8th
So the
grade.
same teacher all those years?
No, we had different teachers. I remember one particular. We had one woman teacher, and I can't remember what her name was. We had the other man's name was it Herbert Green? Well, anyhow, it was there the longest. But often wondered how that's all so long ago. And then of course you had an outside toilet, and then the schoolhouse was warmed by a big stove too, like your home
So the
was.
teacher gave one-on-one with a lot of times because
Well,
kids
that's
were
what you
different
have to
ages.
take.
and-
Like she'd have to take the 1st grade at a certain time, but you went to school 8 hours.
Did you have paper, pencil?
Oh yeah, we had paper and pencil, and I had
Chalkboard.
a desk, but you sat at a desk.
Uh-huh.
So then after 8th grade, then what? Then where did you go to high school? In
I went
Portland?
to Portland High School.
How did you get all the way into Portland?
Well, you see, my freshman year, my dad had to get me a special permit. We had a car, and a special permit to drive to high school.
So 9th grade, you were driving yourself to school.
And with a whole bunch, the car was full of all the kids out there. You could do it then, and he didn't even have to carry insurance. Well, then the 2nd year in high school, Bud was old enough to drive. But by that time, it was in my 2nd grade of high school, I guess, or 3rd grade, that I'd seen this car, that green with yellow spoke wheels. Well, my dad did buy it. So we went to school in that, and that was pretty well, Bud and I both, you know, with that car was.
What about Jay? Now, Jay was older than you and
No,
Bud.
Jay was youngest.
Oh,
one.
Jay was the
Jay
youngest.
was the youngest.
Oh, okay.
See, we was, let's see, when his freshman year, we were graduating.
I see.
We
Then he
had
got the
graduated.
we then, huh?
Well, yeah, I suppose he drove the
Did
car.
you tell a story about when you guys skipped school in the car?
Yeah, me and we were all basketball players, and one day we decided to skip school, and we went to Auburn, above all places, and from Portland, that was a long way.
Long way.
And you know, I tried to point that place out to Andy one time, about where it was, and I can still remember pulling it. It was where they sold beer, but I didn't drink beer or nothing, but maybe some of the other girls did, because I know 2 or 3 of them used to go to Hyatt and get beer, but I never did. Well, anyhow, I never skipped school anymore. We got punished for that night.
Well, how did your parents find out? The school let them know, or?
Well, probably Bud told us.
Oh.
I expect Bud told it.
So all the parents found out and
Oh,
y'all got
yeah.
in trouble.
So you skipped school and went to a tavern and what? Shot pool?
I don't know. I just remember going there, and
Getting into trouble
I
afterwards.
suppose we ate something too. I don't know. We'd have had to. Then $1 would go a long, long ways, you know. Then.
Who was your first boyfriend?
I will. You know, it's funny. I can't remember his name, but I was scared to death. He came to the house, and where did we go? Anyhow, I had to be home before dark. Anyhow, I was scared to death.
How old were you?
Boy. Let's see, when I was, oh boy, was in high school.
High school.
Probably my freshman year, because it was a neighbor boy that,
Where'd you go?
I think we went
movie,
to
maybe?
town, probably just walked the street and come home, I don't know.
Did your dad interrogate him, or did your dad have to?
Well, my dad was one that you had to